The day I flipped the switch and plunged Redstone Acres into darkness was the day I became the most feared man in Ranch, Texas. It all started with a $1,000 fine from Martha Hensley, the red-shirted, pot-bellied tyrant of our homeowners association, for a horse barn my son and I built on our own damn land. What Martha didn't know was that I had a fortune from my oil days, a mind sharpened by years in the energy game, and enough Texas grit to make her regret ever stepping onto my ranch. My name is Ethan Caldwell, and until 3 months ago, I thought I'd found my slice of heaven in the wide open fields of Redstone Acres. I spent 20 years as a petroleum engineer, building a startup that optimized drilling technology. When I sold it for a 9-figure sum at 42, I retired to focus on what mattered most: my son, Liam, who'd just turned 15. His world nearly collapsed when my younger brother, Nate, died in a car accident last year. Nate was Liam's hero, and the grief hit us both like a Texas twister. The only thing that kept us going was working the land together, building fences, tending horses, breathing the clean air of the open plains. So I bought a 200-acre ranch in Redstone Acres, a community that promised rolling green fields, good schools, and a peaceful life. The realtor mentioned an HOA, but brushed it off as just standard stuff: fence heights, livestock rules. I should have caught the hesitation in her voice when she added, Martha Hensley, the HOA president, is very dedicated to community standards. I'd dealt with plenty of tough characters in the oil business. How bad could one neighborhood busybody be? I found out just how bad on a crisp October morning. Liam and I had just finished framing a small horse barn on the eastern edge of our ranch, a project we'd poured our hearts into. It was the first time I'd seen Liam smile in months, swinging a hammer and joking about naming the barn Nate's Stable. We were admiring our handiwork when a figure in a red t-shirt, black pants, and short blonde hair lumbered toward us. Martha Hensley, all 250 pounds of her, clutched a clipboard and wore an expression like she'd caught us torching the neighbor's house. Mr. Caldwell, she snapped, her voice slicing through the quiet morning like a knife. What is this mess? She gestured at our barn as if it were a junkyard. I wiped the sweat from my brow and flashed a smile. Morning, ma'am. Just a horse barn for our 2 mares. I'm Ethan. Moved to Cedar Ridge Road a few months back. Martha didn't even glance at my outstretched hand. She scribbled furiously on her clipboard. This structure is unapproved, a clear violation of Redstone Acres covenants. I'm issuing a violation notice. The fine is $1,000, and you must demolish it immediately. Liam froze beside me, his hammer clattering to the ground. There must be some mistake, I said, keeping my tone calm. This barn's on my private property, fully compliant with county codes. I checked with the zoning office. Martha's smile was cold, devoid of warmth. County codes don't override HOA rules, Mr. Caldwell. All structures require prior approval from the Architectural Committee, which I chair. You'd know this if you'd read the covenant update sent last month. My jaw tightened. We never got any email, I protested. Could you resend it? She waved a dismissive hand, like swatting a fly. It was sent to every household. Check your spam folder. Ignorance is no excuse. I was about to press further when I noticed something odd. Beyond our fence line, a crew was stringing power lines across my northern field, right through the pasture where our horses grazed. Hold on, I said, pointing. What's that? Nobody asked my permission to run lines across my land. Martha's smile grew strained. That's a community infrastructure project, approved by the HOA for the benefit of Redstone Acres. Lone Star Power needed access, and we granted it. You'll be compensated. Minimally. Minimally, I echoed, my voice rising despite myself. That's my pasture. Those lines are cutting through land my horses graze on. Who gave you the right? Martha adjusted her red t-shirt, her potbelly straining against the fabric like it was staging a breakout. Mr. Caldwell, perhaps you're not familiar with how things work around here. Redstone Acres prioritizes community welfare over individual hobbies. If you have an issue, submit a formal complaint. But I warn you, non-compliance with the barn violation could lead to additional fines. Liam's head dropped. The light in his eyes snuffed out. That barn was his way of feeling close to Nate, and now this woman was stomping all over it. "We'll pack up for now," I said quietly, resting a hand on Liam's shoulder. "Please email me the details of the barn violation and any documents about those power lines." Martha's smile was victorious. "Wise choice. And do check your email more carefully, Mr. Caldwell. We don't tolerate sloppy residents." On the walk back to the house, Liam kicked a rock, his voice heavy. "Dad, why's she so mean? We didn't do anything wrong." I didn't have an answer gentle enough for a 15-year-old. Some folks love power more than people. "Son," I said finally, "let's head home, and I'll sort this out." That afternoon, I scoured my email, including the spam folder. No trace of Martha's supposed covenant update. I started digging deeper into Redstone Acres' HOA, and what I found made my blood boil. That afternoon, after Liam retreated to his room with his headphones to escape reality, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and a mug of black coffee strong enough to wake a coma patient. Anger still simmered in my chest. But I'd learned from my years in the oil business, emotions don't solve problems. Information does. I started digging into Redstone Acres' HOA, from their glossy website touting a sustainable community to old social media posts. What I found was like lifting the lid on a barrel full of rattlesnakes. Martha Hensley had been HOA president for a decade, a reign nobody dared challenge. Her day job was running Hensley Realty, a firm specializing in rural properties. Her Facebook posts flaunted lavish barbecues by the community pond, complete with wine and twinkling lights, events that somehow dodged the aesthetic standards she enforced on everyone else. The real kicker was a clause buried deep in the HOA bylaws. Any infrastructure work on private land, like power lines, required the owner's consent. Martha had clearly ignored this when she let Lone Star Power carve through my pasture. I needed more dirt, and luck was on my side the next morning when I ran into Clara Martinez, a goat farmer whose ranch was a few acres from mine. Clara, a wiry woman in her 50s with silver hair tied back, was feeding her herd when I stopped to say hi. When I mentioned the barn fine and the power lines, her eyes narrowed. "So you've met the red-shirted witch," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Martha's been tormenting folks here for a decade. Don't pay that fine, and she'll make your life hell." She glanced around, like she was checking for eavesdroppers. "If you want the real scoop, swing by for coffee. I've got stories that'll make your hair stand on end." Clara's ranch house was cozy, smelling of hay and fresh-baked cookies on her kitchen table. She set down a steaming mug and a thick binder. "This is what I've got on Martha," she said, flipping it open. "She's not just a control freak. She's playing a bigger game." Clara pointed to a utility agreement between the HOA and Lone Star Power. "This power company isn't some corporate giant. It's a private outfit, and their CEO, Carl Brody, is Martha's old college buddy. They're running lines through ranches to cut costs, and Martha's greenlighting it because, well, it sure ain't out of friendship." I skimmed the contract, my pulse quickening. "You're saying she's profiting from this?" Clara shrugged. "Nobody's proved it, but I'd bet my prize goat she's getting kickbacks. Or worse, she's forcing ranchers to sell cheap, so her realty company can cash in." She pointed to a list of ranches sold over the past 5 years. Most belonged to folks who crossed Martha. They got hit with fines, wrong fence paint, too many chickens until they gave up. Clara introduced me to Jonah Reed, a retired accountant living a few miles away. Jonah, a lanky man with thick glasses, welcomed me into his home office, a fortress of file cabinets and spreadsheets. "I started tracking Martha when she fined me for unapproved solar panels," he said, pulling up a detailed spreadsheet. "Her realty company, Hensley Realty, has snapped up 6 ranches at bargain prices after owners were bled dry by fines. Then they flipped them for double." He pointed to a map of the area. "Those power lines, they cross 5 ranches, all owned by people who've challenged Martha. Yours is smack in the middle." The pieces were falling into place. Martha wasn't just a petty tyrant. She was running a racket. But the power lines intrigued me most. With my background in energy, I knew private utilities like Lone Star Power were often vulnerable, especially if their finances were shaky. I asked Jonah to dig into Lone Star's books while I reached out to Sarah Nguyen, an old colleague now working in energy mergers. Within days, Sarah sent a report that made me sit up straight. Lone Star Power was drowning in debt after a failed solar project. They were desperate for cash, and their assets, including the local grid, were valued at just $2.5 million. Meanwhile, Martha turned up the heat. New violation notices arrived daily. $200 for unauthorized irrigation, $150 for excessive dust from our dirt road. When I filed appeals, they vanished into the HOA's black hole. Worse, Liam came home with red-rimmed eyes. Kids at school are calling me a troublemaker, he choked out. They heard Brianna's mom say our ranch is polluting the groundwater. I traced the rumor to Brianna's mother, Martha's best friend on the HOA board, who'd spread it at a PTA meeting. This wasn't just about me anymore. She was hurting my son. That night, I called Clara and Jonah. I'm not selling the ranch, I said, my voice steel. Martha wants a fight. She's got one. We started building a secret coalition, meeting in Clara's hay barn to dodge Martha's spies. Maria Lopez, a single mom fined for her kid's treehouse. Hank Thompson, a veteran cited for unapproved solar panels. And others joined us. We swapped stories of Martha's abuses, selective fines, rigged votes, even threats to report code violations to the county. Jonah set up an encrypted group chat for updates, and I started to feel the power of a community coming together. I've never been one to sit still when someone tries to walk all over me, and Martha Hensley was testing the patience of a guy who'd negotiated with oil industry titans. After our meeting in Clara's hay barn, I knew I needed hard evidence to expose Martha's game. I laid out the plan with Jonah and Clara, dig into Lone Star Power's finances and find the link to Martha's real estate empire. If she was taking kickbacks or forcing land sales, there'd be a trail, and I'm damn good at finding what people want to hide. Jonah, his eyes lighting up like a bloodhound on a scent, agreed to comb through Lone Star Power's public filings. I've audited a few small energy firms, he said, adjusting his glasses. If there's anything shady, I'll sniff it out. Meanwhile, I reached out to Sarah Nguyen, my old colleague turned merger specialist. Sarah had a network in the energy sector as wide as a Texas prairie, and she promised to poke around about Lone Star's situation. Give me 3 days, she said over the phone. If they're in debt, I'll know exactly who they owe and how much. While waiting, I kept in touch with our coalition through Jonah's encrypted group chat. Maria Lopez shared how she'd been fined $500 for overheight shrubs in her yard, even though they'd been there before she moved in. Hank Thompson told us Martha threatened to report his chicken coop to the county for odors, despite his nearest neighbor being half a mile away. Each story was a puzzle piece, painting a picture of a tyrant who didn't just control. She profited. This wasn't just personal anger anymore. It was a fight for the whole community. But Martha wasn't about to let me breathe easy. New violation notices rained down. $300 for a non-compliant fence, though I'd measured it to the inch. $100 for a misplaced trash bin on a windy day. When I filed appeals, they vanished into the HOA's black hole. Worse, she started targeting Liam. One afternoon, he came home, face pale. Dad, my teacher pulled me aside because someone reported me for vandalism on the school bulletin board, he said, voice trembling. I didn't do anything. I dug into it and found Brianna's mother, Martha's right-hand woman on the HOA board, had sent an anonymous email accusing Liam of property damage. The rumor spread like wildfire, and kids started shunning him. Seeing Liam shrink into himself in his room, I felt my anger harden into razor-sharp resolve. That night, Sarah called back. You were right, Ethan, she said, her voice buzzing with excitement. Lone Star Power's drowning. They borrowed $10 million for a botched solar project. Their assets, including the local grid, are worth about $2.5 million. But they need to sell fast to avoid bankruptcy. And here's the juicy part. Carl Brody, their CEO, signed side contracts with a company called Prairie Holdings. Guess who's behind it? I gripped the phone tighter. Martha Hensley. Sarah snorted. Bingo. It's registered under a relative's name, but the trail leads straight to Hensley Realty. The next morning, Jonah emailed me a file. Lone Star Power's financial reports and a list of real estate transactions. Martha's clever, but not clever enough. He wrote, Prairie Holdings had received consulting fees of $5,000 per quarter from Lone Star, totaling $2,000 over the past year. Meanwhile, Hensley Realty had scooped up 3 ranches at bargain prices after their owners were crushed by fines. One was flipped for $4 million, while other real estate firms could have bought it back. Jonah's conclusion. Martha's using Lone Star to strong-arm ranchers into selling cheap, then grabbing the land for her company. I called the group to Clara's hay barn to share the findings. Clara nodded, her eyes blazing. She thinks nobody's got the guts to dig. But she picked the wrong fight. Maria clenched her fists. We've got to stop her. My kids don't deserve to be dragged into her dirty games. Hank, usually quiet, spoke up. If you've got a plan. Ethan, I'm in. I smiled. I've got a plan. But we need timing and absolute secrecy. I reached out to a real estate lawyer, David Walsh, who'd worked with me in the oil industry. David confirmed that Lone Star's contracts with Prairie Holdings could be investigated for conflicts of interest, and their access through my ranch was illegal without my consent. If you want to go big, he said, buying Lone Star Power is the fastest way to take control. They're begging for investors, and you've got the cash. I nodded. The idea of buying a utility company sounded insane, but I'd done crazier things to protect what mattered. Meanwhile, Martha ramped up her harassment. One morning, I spotted an HOA inspection team, led by Martha herself, outside my fence, snapping photos and measuring. She wore her signature red t-shirt, her potbelly jiggling as she barked into a walkie-talkie. When I confronted her, she smirked. Mr. Caldwell, this ranch shows signs of environmental violations. I suggest you cooperate, unless you want the county involved. I kept my cool. Send me an official report, Martha. And next time, don't step on my land without a warrant. She huffed and stormed off. But I knew she was gearing up for something bigger. That weekend, Liam came home in tears again. I don't want to go to school anymore, he said. They're calling me a vandal, saying you're hurting the community. I hugged him, feeling like my heart was being crushed. Martha wasn't just coming for me. She was trying to break my son. That night, I sat by Liam until he fell asleep, and I made a silent vow Martha would pay. Not just for me, but for everyone she'd hurt. That night, after Liam drifted off with his eyes still red from crying, I sat in my small home office, the laptop screen casting a glow across my face. Buying Lone Star Power wasn't just a wild idea anymore. It was the only way to flip the board on Martha Hensley. With what Sarah and Jonah had uncovered, I knew Martha wasn't just a power-hungry tyrant. She was a spider spinning a web, and my ranch, along with others, was caught in it. But I'd faced bigger players in the oil industry, and I knew how to hit where it hurt. I called Sarah the next morning. I want to buy Lone Star Power, I said, my voice steady. The whole company. Cash. As fast as possible. Sarah went quiet for a moment, then laughed. Ethan, you never do things halfway, do you? They're desperate. And $3 million will have their board begging. But you'll need a shell company to hide your identity. Martha's got eyes everywhere. I agreed. And Sarah started drafting the paperwork through Caldwell Energy, LLC, an entity I'd set up just for this deal. Meanwhile, I gathered the group at Clara's hay barn for an update. Clara, her silver hair glinting under the oil lamp, nodded in approval. If you control the grid, Martha's got nothing left to threaten us with. Jonah, ever cautious, warned. She won't sit still when she realizes she's been outplayed. We need to keep this quiet until the last second. Maria gripped my hand, her eyes resolute. For my kids, I trust you. Ethan, I felt the weight on my shoulders, not just for Liam, but for everyone pinning their hopes on me. Martha didn't give us a moment's peace. One morning, I got a new violation notice. $400 for excessive weeds in a corner of my pasture. I'd left wild for pollinating bees. When I challenged her via email, she replied with sickeningly sweet condescension. Mr. Caldwell, Redstone Acres has standards. If you can't keep up, perhaps this isn't the place for you. At the same time, She led an inspection team to Hank Thompson's ranch, measuring his chicken coop with a tape measure, while wearing her signature red t-shirt and black pants, her potbelly jiggling with every pointed gesture. Hank called me, his voice shaking with rage. She says if I don't tear down the coop, she'll report me for environmental pollution. What does she want from us? The answer came by the weekend when Martha called an emergency HOA meeting. She sent an email announcing a grid enhancement plan, demanding each household pay an extra $75 a month to support community infrastructure. I read between the lines and saw it for what it was: a ploy to funnel money to Lone Star Power, bailing out Carl Brody's debts and keeping Martha's arrangement intact. I shared the email with David Walsh, my lawyer. She's trying to raise cash to shore up her position before Lone Star collapses. David said, if you want to buy the company, now's the time to move before she catches wind. I met with Lone Star's CFO, Tom Harper, via video call, still under the guise of Caldwell Energy LLC. I'm offering $3, $2 million, all cash, closing in 7 days, I said. Tom nearly dropped his coffee mug. That's well above our expectations, he stammered. Martha Hensley's been negotiating for a stake, but she needs time to raise funds. I smiled. Cut her out. I'll pay now. No strings. Tom agreed, and Sarah fast-tracked the paperwork to ensure Martha stayed in the dark. Meanwhile, Martha's pressure became suffocating. One afternoon, I spotted a county truck parked outside my ranch, sent by an inspector Martha had summoned to test water quality. The inspector, a middle-aged guy with a bored expression, admitted he was there because of an anonymous complaint about pollution from my property. I walked him through the pasture, showing him the clean irrigation system and recent water tests. He shrugged. Looks fine, but I've got to file a report since Mrs. Hensley's got pull with the county office. I gritted my teeth, knowing Martha was leveraging every connection to choke me out. The worst was Liam. One evening, he came home, threw his backpack on the floor, and bolted to his room. I hate this place, he yelled before slamming the door. I knocked, and after a while, he let me in. The kids at school say you're a troublemaker, that you're ruining Redstone Acres, he said, tears streaming down his face. I can't take it anymore. I hugged him, feeling like my chest was being crushed. Martha wasn't just coming for me, she was destroying my son. And for a moment, I wondered if giving up was better for him. Maybe selling the ranch and leaving would spare him the pain. But then David called. The paperwork's done, he said. Lone Star Power is yours, through Caldwell Energy LLC. Martha doesn't suspect a thing, and the deal closes in 48 hours. A surge of energy hit me. Selling the ranch would mean letting Martha win, and I couldn't let Liam grow up thinking running away was how you solve problems. I called the group together again, this time at Jonah's house to avoid prying eyes. We're about to have the biggest weapon, I said, but we have to wait for the perfect moment, the next HOA meeting. When Martha's at her cockiest, Clara clapped me on the shoulder. Take her down. Ethan, for all of us, I nodded. But in my heart, it was all for Liam. I'd do this for him, for Nate, and for everyone Martha had trampled. The HOA meeting took place on a Saturday evening at the Redstone Acres Community Center, where the air was thick with the smell of cheap coffee and simmering tension. Martha Hensley stood at the podium, wearing her signature red t-shirt, her potbelly straining against the fabric like it was staging a revolt, her short blonde hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. She was droning on about the grid enhancement plan, demanding each household pay $105 a month to secure the community's future. The crowd of about 50 residents sat quietly, some nodding, others frowning but too intimidated to speak. I sat in the back row, clutching a folder of documents, my heart pounding. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. Clara, Jonah, Maria, and Hank were scattered throughout the crowd, their eyes meeting mine in silent agreement. We'd rehearsed this moment, ensuring every detail was airtight. Martha, radiating the confidence of a queen, boasted about her connections to Lone Star Power. Thanks to my leadership, we'll have the most advanced electrical system in the region, she declared, her voice dripping with artificial honey. Those who oppose are only holding back progress. I stood, raising my hand. Martha squinted, her smile faltering slightly. Mr. Caldwell, if you have another complaint, please wait for the discussion period. I smiled, stepping forward and taking the microphone. Not a complaint. Miss Hensley, I have an announcement. The room buzzed with whispers. Martha crossed her arms, her belly jiggling as she huffed. Make it quick. We have important business. I opened my folder, my voice calm, but razor sharp, as of yesterday. I am the owner of Lone Star Power, through Caldwell Energy, LLC. The entire Redstone Acres grid now belongs to me. The room fell dead silent. Martha dropped her clipboard, her face shifting from red to ghostly white. That's impossible, she stammered. I held up the notarized purchase agreement. Check it, Monsieur Hensley. And by the way, your contracts with Prairie Holdings canceled. Your consulting fees, too. The crowd erupted. Clara shot to her feet, shouting, How long have you been fleecing us? Martha. Maria waved a stack of grievance letters, her voice trembling with anger. You find us to steal our land for your real estate company. Martha tried to regain control, slamming her hand on the podium. Silence. These are slanderous lies. But I was ready. I presented Jonah's financial reports, detailing payments from Lone Star to Prairie Holdings, and the list of ranches forced into cheap sales. The residents have the right to demand an investigation, I said, and I'm sure the county will be very interested. Martha collapsed into her chair. Speechless, I turned to the crowd. Starting today, I'm cutting power to all properties owned by the current HOA leadership unless they resign. Everyone else. Your electricity's free until we elect a new board. Thunderous applause broke out. Hank stood, raising a fist. Time for a change. A few of Martha's loyalists tried to object, but they were drowned out by the residents' cheers. Within 3 days, Martha and her allies resigned, facing lawsuits from residents and an investigation into Hensley Realty's shady dealings. I transferred part of the grid to a community trust with strict rules to prevent future abuses. Redstone Acres elected a new board, with Clara as president. My ranch became a hub for sustainable energy workshops, and Liam, for the first time in months, grinned as he led a group of kids building model wind turbines. One evening, Liam and I sat on the porch, watching a fiery Texas sunset spill across the fields. Dad, he said softly, Uncle Nate would be proud of you. Right. I ruffled his hair, a warmth spreading through my chest. He'd be proud of both of us, son. Justice isn't just about winning, it's about building something better. And if you're battling your own bully like Martha, take it from me. Know the rules, bide your time, and hit hard. Where are you watching this video from? Hiding out in a hay barn or sneaking a peek during a boring HOA meeting? Drop a comment and tell me your story about facing off with a Martha in your life. Don't forget to like and share to spread that unbreakable Texas spirit.